This is a story about gear, about money, about garbage and landfills, about Polyend, about a global crisis of epic portions. Think when you go to Olive Garden and order dinner, the portions they give you, that epic. Also proportions. God damn it, cut. If you are in the synth music gear world, this story will be very interesting. If you're not, you're just going to want to fast forward to the music making stuff, or alternatively, I suppose you could save this part for the next time you have insomnia. Okay, so a few years back, Polyend designed this thing, and compared to this and this and this, which are all kind of different flavors of the same workflow, the Play had a lot of research and development. And there's a really good reason why a lot, if not the majority of companies, don't make things like this. It's because there's a high amount of risk. It could go really well, or it could go really not well. So in the middle of the Play's research and development and prototyping and manufacturing, the world turned into a real-time horror movie, and one subplot of that horror movie was a massive semiconductor shortage. So obviously this caused a whole lot of unforeseen challenges and workarounds and delays, but the Play finally made it into our hands and on retail shelves, and it was actually a huge success. And the problem was that stores couldn't keep them in stock, so Polyend increased production. And then right after that, 2023 happened. And if you work in tech, or especially in the music production space, 2023 is like a sequel to the aforementioned horror movie, as both sales and retail imports of music gear are universally down by a lot across the board. Everybody making and selling the stuff you make music with is feeling this pain and struggling compared to 2 years ago. And so meanwhile, while riding on this roller coaster, Polyend is designing the Play Plus, which has some pretty significant upgrades from the Play. More on those in a second. And while doing this, they have a really clever idea. Let's make it look exactly the same. And so instead of trying to make it bigger or shinier or adding some sort of unnecessary visually differentiating factor that would make people run out and buy it, they instead treat it like a version upgrade. It's $799, the same price as the original Play, and if you already own a Play, you could just send it in, pay $399, and get the new, way more powerful one. These, like all Polyend products, are assembled by hand in Poland, so when you send this in, they can just take a case if it's in great condition, run some quality control on the screen, put a brand new board inside, and sell it as a refurbished unit down the line. This allows the original Play to be sold for $499 now, pricing it alongside entry-level hardware. And in my opinion, even if you have no interest in a groove box, just the MIDI mode alone would make this like the best value MIDI sequencer in history, maybe. Anyway, in this process, existing customers who own the Play are rewarded with a $400 upgrade on an entire new unit, and this much e-trash becomes, at the very most, like this much. Like, think about how many products you've owned from the exact same company that look almost identical, if not completely identical, to the previous version. I'm looking at you, Apple. And like, some of these cases are almost indestructible. I would have to go far out of my way to damage it in any way. So why should consumers have to pay to replace them? All right, anyway, that's the end of my rant. I just thought that that was a really clever and customer-friendly way of approaching an upgrade, so much so that I think it's just as important as the product itself. And I really like the product. And by like it, I mean that I have traveled around the country with it as my sole music-making device and been completely content with that. I use it on my kitchen table. I use it down here with all of these pieces of gear as my go-to sequencer most of the time. As much as I like and simp for the Tracker and the Tracker Mini, I actually like the Play a lot more, and that's because it's extremely practical, and it can, in some way, shape, or form, organically blend into the workflow of just about any of my DAW-less music making. It's also semi-generative by design, meaning that it's intentionally designed to find that perfect sweet spot between like MIDI chord packs and just generating random noise. But it did have its limitations if you were using it as a standalone device. The two of those limitations that were the largest, for me anyway, were the lack of stereo file support and the lack of onboard onboard synthesizers. Now the Play Plus, which sports this little plus here, has hardware that's about 5 times faster than the Play, on paper anyway. And that upgrade removes those limitations by allowing you to use as many stereo samples as you could fit into the onboard memory. It also adds 4 different editable polyphonic synth engines, complete with various oscillators, filters, envelopes, LFOs, and even a routing matrix. And since the original Play came out, there were quite a few firmware updates that added features like piano roll, for example, which I was really excited about because it's actually kind of hard to find a piano roll on hardware. But I actually only used it like 2 times, not because it's bad, but because it's not as useful or as cool as the primary grid sequencer on the Play. Another firmware update allows you to export audio stems of each of these grid lines. That video light is hot. The Play Plus also adds USB streaming, up to 26 tracks of it. Now I have played around a little bit with the USB audio streaming on the Tracker Mini by hooking it up to an iPad and then added some effects with AUM. And it works, and it's really awesome. Now I'm imagining a perfect fantasy world where you can plug a class-compliant audio interface into the Play Plus and get up to 26 individual analog outputs. The hardware is there, the firmware is there, it's just that audio class compliance doesn't really mean much these days. For example, some of the newer Akai MPC products have this functionality, and I've personally never had any success getting it to work. And after about 10 years of owning iPads for music production, I've never had an audio interface just work across the board. You'll buy something for the 2020 iPad, and it simply won't work on your 2022 iPhone. So I wasn't about to spend a day testing a prototype with beta firmware on various input-output devices. I did, however, for some reason, take a USB-C to USB-C cable and plug my Play Plus into my phone, and not only did my phone power the Play Plus, but it captured the direct master audio perfectly. So this should work with the new iPhone too, and that's actually super handy and clever if you just want to capture a video or even just the audio of what you're currently working on. I also quickly plugged it into my M1 MacBook Air and opened up FL Studio, and sure enough, it showed a lot of inputs and outputs, but I didn't really test it that much. Okay, anyway, let's go mess with the thing. So if you've never seen the original Polyend Play before, I want to quickly show you the overall functionality of it, which won't really take that long because the concept of the whole thing is to not take that long in getting you started with writing music. So I'm just going to load a sample pack here, and let's go with Tech House Pack and load. I've never loaded that pack before, and I do think that it is the largest one I've ever seen. I've never gotten that far filled with the memory, so good example, I guess. Something that is really important to know right off the bat that I probably didn't communicate in my earlier Polyend Play videos is that samples are assigned to folders. So we have bass, clap, crash, effects, hat, keys, kick, pad, etc. And then within those folders, we have a bunch of different snare drums. But what the sample folder or sample tagging does in this case, other than impress our parents with how organized we are, is allow you to just select 3 different rows and then select fill, press play, press fill. Let's go to drum and bass and turn that tempo up. I dig this, but it's not really doing it for me, so I'm going to randomize all the sounds. Okay, so I dig this, except for the bass drum. Not a huge fan. So I'm going to hit solo on the kick drum here. It sounds a little too long, a little too 808-y. So I'm going to hit sample. I'm going to select them all, and I'm going to hit sample decay and fade it out quicker. Nice. And maybe bring it up a couple notes. Now let's put in some sort of note. I like that. Turn the volume down on that. Give it some reverb. Maybe some delay. Bring it down an octave. Okay. So let's say that I want this to be a little bit longer. I can just make the track speed slower on here. So now watch these little buttons moving. See, this one's going much slower. So now I have the option. I could actually make it even slower than that, all the way down to 1/8. Let's go ham with that. And then I decided that I don't want to use all these, so I'm going to select track length and bring it down to 8. And now we should have a looping pattern. All right, this needs some bass. Let's hold down Shift and go into MIDI mode here. And MIDI mode, you could have something go out to a MIDI DIN channel 1 through 16, a MIDI USB channel 1 through 16, or now we have onboard synthesizers. And in this case, I'm going to choose Fat. And so I'm going to solo this track and let's see what Fat does. Now, if I want to change that particular sound for this song, I could go into synths, go to that synth number 2. I could change the model from acid, fat, virtual analog polysynth. I'm assuming, I have no idea what that means. And WTFM, which is an FM synth. If you are watching this on a phone, you're probably not even going to hear it because it is subtle and bassy. Okay, so I'm going to hold down Shift and I'm going to select all these notes here. I'm going to copy them, then I'm going to go into this second row and I'm going to select these notes and I'm going to paste them. I'm going to continue doing that for even more rows. Now we have 4 rows of that same sort of sound, but now we could change the notes to actually go along with what the piano's doing. For me, this is the beginning of a track. This is the bed to create more original ideas on top of. And it was pretty much effortless to make it this far, right? So let's take advantage of some of the generative stuff and add another synth. Let's go with, I kind of want to try out that poly one. I am just going to go to custom delay, custom parameters here. Let's go with like a 3 sync rate, so it's a little bit slower. Then we could change the reverb to something else, maybe uncharted. That might be a little too much. Pretty crazy algorithm there. We have a C5 here, and what I want to do is set it up so there is a, I don't know, 70% chance that it will play a random note. Let's go to 90%. All right. You would go psychotic if you listen to that for more than a minute. So what we're going to do is go into scales here. We're going to turn them on. We're going to go to C minor. That should work just fine. So I'm going to select a hi-hat here, and I'm going to go to fill, right over here rather, and then Euclidean fill works. Or we could just go completely random. Now we could select some of these individual notes and have repeats. We could also randomize the sample that's played. Let's limit it a bit. And we could choose the type of limiter we want. And if we want to sidechain from track 1, which is the kick, it will sound like this. Quite good. And now let's go into perform mode and select all these tracks here and All right, so you're probably getting the gist of what this device is all about. I'm going to show you what's new, and I'm going to show you what's new and what's old that is my favorite and why I like it so much. I'm going to do something that I never do. Save a song. I like the auto name, Dysfunctional Ant. Smooth Friction. That actually really kind of does sound like this song, so let's just go with that. My new song, Smooth Friction. I'm just gonna jam. I just set this up. This is using the WTFM synth, and I have the polyphony set to 4. One thing to note is that if I go into settings, I can have quantizing on recording on or off. I'm gonna leave it on. Now, while we can just hit one step here and make it a chord, if we want to record chords, we're gonna have to select 4 channels, and that way it could record all 4 at once. So let's play some nonsense into 32 steps. And we could change to different swings and different play modes for different channels here. All right, I'm gonna bring in a bass. Let's go into sample mode now, do some fill-in. So you heard that little jam and you probably got a few questions. 3 maybe even. 1, Ben, where did you get your PhD in music? B, does the Polyend Play Plus run on batteries? And 3, what the fuck happened to your eyebrow? And the answer to all those questions is no. But number B, letter 2, check this out. I'm gonna turn this off without saving it. Then I'm gonna do something really crazy. I'm gonna plug in my old Samsung phone here and watch this. Don't look at my notifications, you creep. Boom. Will it load? All right, so I'm gonna open up my camera and record some video. All right, time to post it to Instagram and leak the whole release. By the way, while this does come with a bunch of sample packs, you don't have to use those. You could load whatever you want on the micro SD card. And what I want is a 707. Might as well see if we can make like a 303 sounding thing, right? Started this wanting to make an FM bassline that I would then edit with parameter locking. And yeah, I didn't. So let's start that over. I suppose this new firmware is stable. Okay, new empty project. Let's just quickly make a synth And you may not have the same options that you see in the menu here depending on the firmware that you have, because I know that one of them is a more basic preset browser and another one's an editor, probably just because one might be too confusing for one person and the other might be too limiting for the other. Okay, go into Edit Patch. So we could set these envelopes for the FM amount. We have a nice little routing matrix here. Ooh, get some Sonic the Hedgehog sounds here. And the others are more or less subtractive synths. I like this. So the FM synth is about as complicated as I would ever want an FM synth to be on a screen this size. And with those first three, I would say that if you are a novice synthesizer enthusiast and you know what an ADSR is and an LFO and cutoff and pitch and all that stuff, then you probably won't have any problems making your own presets. And so it's obviously not some super powerful Waldorf quantum-esque type of synthesizer, nor should you expect it to be. But one thing that actually does make it really powerful is all of the macros here. Each synthesizer patch has its own custom macros. This one's pretty basic, like cutoff, resonance, stuff like that. But some of them get quite creative, especially with the FM engine. That's enough. All right, that was fun. As mentioned earlier, the Play Plus cost $799, the exact same price of the original one, and now the remaining units of the original Play will drop in price significantly, and if you own a Play, you can upgrade it for $399. Like I said in the beginning of this video, I really like this approach to upgrading a piece of gear, and I hope that more companies follow this trend, as it's not only way friendlier to your customers, but it's also a pretty innovative way to survive an economic winter. Speaking of economic winters, I'm not being paid a cent to make this video by Polyend or a retailer or anyone, contrary to what some people believe from my past support of their products. I do not work for Polyend. In all transparency, I became pretty good friends with some of the folks at Polyend some years back, and that bond probably just started with our mutual love of exploring new ways to enjoy making music. I did get a free prototype though. At least I think I did, because I haven't been asked for it back yet. But even if somebody did pay for a video on this channel, and you know where this next part's about to go, it would just go transparently and directly to research or education projects, because this whole shit right here is a nonprofit organization. And if you want to support this channel and be part of an incredible community of like-minded individuals that take part in monthly songwriting challenges, and if you want access to unreleased music and released music and audio assets, and all sorts of goodies, you can join my Patreon for as little as $1. All right, thanks for watching. Keep creating. Later. Bye.